Yo guys, what is good? I hope you're all doing absolutely amazing and are trading safely in the markets. It's your boy VGOK here and I'm back with another video. Now in today's video I'm going to be going over a Gbpjpy sell scenario which I took. Now this was an example of a distribution type schematic within a downtrend and it was executed on Thursday the 19th of August within New York session. Now, before we get into the full trade breakdown, as you guys can see from my past few videos, there hasn't been a great deal of case study videos that I've posted. I've only been posting the educational type of videos. Now, that's because for the past month or so, I've taken a bit of a break from the charts. And this is mainly because I've been so busy with, seeing family again after a long time, going on holidays, or I should say staycations, obviously with COVID not allowing any holidays right now. And of course, India wedding season is back in full force, so I haven't had as much time as I'd like to be fully analyzing on the charts. So today's trade that I'm going to be going over, I think it was the third trade I took, and I lost the first two after a month's break. So at the moment, I'm just refamiliarizing myself with trading again, after that long break. But without any further ado, let's jump straight into the video. So first things first, let's get straight into the screenshots. So as you can see on your screen now, I've got the before screenshot. And as you can see from the actual entry that I took, I actually had two entries. My first entry was at the start of these two bullish candles before this major drop here. And my second entry was just at the imbalance fill, so slightly higher. I think it was about 2 pips higher up. That was the main entry that I took right there. Obviously stop loss above the previous high, and then my first TP would be targeting down in here, down at the previous demand zone. And then jumping into the after screenshot, as you can see now, this is on the 3-minute time frame, it's slightly more zoomed out approach, and I did end up holding this overnight to see it get to my final TP. As you can see, I had a larger sort of a 4-hour rally-based rally demand zone in purple right here on the left, which I'm circling right now, which you can see. And also there is a further lower demand zone, which was based off an hourly institutional candle, which was identified by, which I've labeled by this sort of black box down in here, which you'll be able to see more clearly later on. But yeah, having my final sort of TP just at the start of that lower demand zone. So just having my sort of final TP right there, and that gave me a 1:15 risk to reward ratio. So jumping straight into the full trade breakdown. Now before I can, obviously you guys can see this is the trade that I took, but before I go into the nitty gritty of the actual entry and all that sort of stuff, I'm gonna zoom out, and actually we're gonna have a look at identifying those larger demand zones which I was talking about that we saw in the screenshots. So as I actually go to the 4-hour time frame, what we can see on Gbpjpy, we had 3 touches of this trend line right here to start off with. So you had 1 touch, 2 touch, 3 touches of a trend line. We then had a sharp move down, taking out any sort of if there were any traders trading along this trend line, they would have been taken out by this movement down. And then obviously you can see that sell to buy movement, that sort of manipulative movement that we always like to see. And then as we zoom in to the actual candlesticks, what we can see on the 4-hour time frame, we've got what starts to look like this rally, and then we have these couple smaller candlesticks right here. So 1, 2, 3, about 4 candlesticks, acting as the base. Maybe 5 if you're counting this one as well, but 4 to 5 candlesticks is the maximum amount of candlesticks I like to look at for candlesticks within the base. So we've got that rally, base, and then that further rally to the upside right there. So my first zone is going to be looking at from this imbalance fill right in here down to basically the bottom of this candlestick right here, where the wick is. So that was my first 4-hour point of interest. But as we go down into the hourly point of interest, the hourly time frame, what we can actually see as I zoom in, the hourly time frame actually presents us a nicer looking institutional candle. This sell before buy, this 1-hour institutional candlestick, the open of it was kind of met right in here, but as we look closely, you know, there is actually some area of imbalance within here, and I'm going to mark that out for us right now. So as you can see, this is the area of imbalance that still exists within that area. So as I extend this out, we'll be looking at that later on. So as we extend this out, we will be needing this later on. So let's just extend it out, and you'll see what, you can probably see why already, but I'm going to go into it in a lot more detail in a bit. So first things first was to identify those two demand zones, you know, these large, you know, larger time frame demand zones which you can look to play into. But now looking at obviously how price has progressed, you know, it would have been really nice, and putting my sort of session times back on, it would have been really nice to identify this whole sell setup, you know, maybe up here, or even if it was over here, you know, just putting a rough risk to reward ratio on, you know, around here, we'd be able to see, you know, the sort of the risk to reward, you know, would be looking to achieve, you know, on this. And obviously our final TP down within that imbalance right there, you know, you could see the degree of risk to reward ratio we'd looking to achieve right there. So it would have been nice to obviously see this earlier on, but as I said earlier on in the video, it was hard for me to, you know, trade in the past sort of couple of weeks to a month. But as you can see, you know, that was on the 13th of August we saw that sort of movement down, you know, filling of this imbalance and then that movement down. So that was about, what, a week ago now from the time I'm recording this video. But as we actually go to the day of execution, so as we can see, you know, the trade that I actually executed was here. And let me go into a 15-minute time frame for you guys. Now, this is that Thursday, the day of execution, and as we can see from, you know, pretty much early London session, so from like, you know, pre-London session at 7 AM, what do we see? A massive drop off in price for Gbpjpy, and it actually, you know, gets into the first 4-hour zone very aggressively. You know, as we can see, you know, London session, it really penetrates deep into that first 4-hour rally-based rally demand zone. And, you know, usually if this demand zone is going to be valid, we would like to see, you know, some sort of, at least some sort of sharp reaction on it, on the first impact of that zone. So, you know, the first time it hits that zone, we can see there's not really a good reaction away from it. You know, it still carries on going deeper. So in my eyes, you know, I was anticipating price to go further and further deeper towards that that hourly sort of institutional candle we looked at earlier. So, you know, this black box right in here. But as I zoom in to the actual price action on the 15-minute, we can see how price pulled up, you know, midway through that 4-hour rally-based rally, you know, first zone that we identified. You know, you can see that it pulled back up to here. And if we look actually on the 5-minute time frame and go back to the day, here we go. So the first sort of area, you know, this was quite a considerable move up. You know, we could see there's a lot of momentum within this move up. You know, this whole candlestick took out all of these previous candlesticks worth of price, you know, fairly easily. So, you know, there's a lot of momentum in this push to the upside. And, you know, we had a good rally-based rally on the 5-minute here to look at 4-hour sort of entry for, you know, a hedge buy, you know, just in case this 4-hour demand was valid, you know, we'd be looking at buying within here. So as we jump it into replay mode, you know, you can start to see as price goes up. And obviously I've also identified here, you know, we've got this sort of very smaller time frame trend line happening right in here. And we do have this major candlestick. This is the main candlestick that really went above that trend line, you know, took out the liquidity above, and then we saw a following move to the downside, which then went on to break structure below. So that also acted as another point of interest for us. But as we sort of play price, you know, we get that first buying, you know, movement that we like to see. So, you know, there was one position that I did have, you know, based off of this, having stops just at the bottom of that base right there. So just at the bottom of that candlestick there. So with a 12 pip stop, and, you know, looking to at least take it up to around here. So it's about a 1 to 2.9, almost a 1 to 3 risk to reward ratio, just to have hedges, you know, in case it does go on higher up to, you know, and, you know, there are further imbalances up in here that it could potentially go to. So, you know, there was a potential for it to reach at least a 1 to 9, which is very good. But, you know, first TPs around this area here, because we did actually identify this being another point of interest for sells. And obviously, as you know, the the result of the trade, it did end up being a sell. But yeah, as we forward the price, start to see it touching the first instant it comes up into the supply zone. We can see it comes up into there quite nicely. It gives a decent reaction away, so that's what we really wanted to see off the 4-hour zone here for this to be valid. You know, we wanted to see it come into it, even if it was a little bit, but see a good reaction away. We didn't get that until, you know, halfway through the zone down in here. You know, we wanted to see it at the start of the zone, you know, around this area here. But, you know, we can get a really good movement away from the supply zone as we've seen there. And then after this candlestick has formed, we've got a degree of equal highs right here. So, you know, we're getting a liquidity build up literally just below a supply zone, or literally in line with the supply zone in this scenario. Then we get this wick up, or we get this candlestick closing up here. Now, if I actually go to the 1 minute time frame right now, you know, within this, what can we actually see? You know, there's a big inefficiency of price in this, within these two candlesticks right here. And, you know, if you're to go into maybe a 30-second or a 15-second time frame, I guarantee, you know, there'd be a base sitting just in between those two candlesticks, acting as the base drop, which really initiated that move down. So just putting a line on there just to see, you know, if we can get a reaction from there, from this blue line, then, you know, we should be good to look for more sell scenarios. So as we forward the price again, so after here, this was another time, you know, I took a losing trade after seeing this reaction. You know, in my eyes, we saw the liquidity had been taken, very fast movement down, and structure had been broken. So another trade which I took, and this was one of those sort of trades I mentioned earlier on that I actually lost. You know, I was looking at taking this sort of trade with a 5.4 pip stop, looking to get it at least down into here again. So looking at a 1 to 6 just to down into there. And obviously if it does go lower, then happy days. But as we see what happened after that, so we're getting into this entry right here, does go into profit a little bit. It was in nice profits, and then it did decide to reverse. But then we finally hit that, you know, that base drop on sort of that 1 minute or 30-second time frame that we're sort of anticipating, basically where that blue line was. So we get it coming up to there. And what we can see as price, you know, gets into that blue line, we can see a very, very good rejection away from it already in that first candlestick. So as we forward the price, let's see, we get that right there. So I was meant to stop it just after this black candlestick right here. And then obviously, let me just put it back so we'll be able to see it again properly. So there was that next candlestick which we wanted to see. Let me move that out of the way. And, you know, this is where I started to look to base, you know, more sell entries on, because basically what we've got right here, you know, another, you know, possible sort of trend line looking thing right here. So, you know, if 1 touch, 2 touch, that third touch of the trend line is around this area, and then what happens immediately after, you know, it goes down a little bit, in making sure that, you know, the sellers are, you know, thinking that they're in profits, and then the manipulation happens. You know, we get that buy to sell movement that we like to see. So obviously the two entries which I had, you know, one entry at the imbalance fill, which I've got right there, and then one entry right here. So the first one was probably about a 7.5 to 8 pip stop, probably about an 8 pip stop right there for that lower entry. And this entry we were looking at around a 6 pip stop, I think it was. Yeah, a 6 pip stop for that one. And as we look to continue the price, we can see how this entry played out as well. So bearing in mind, you know, we're still in these buys from over here. So, you know, this is still floating, you know, at the time, the highest it was floating at was a 1 to 3.8. So it's still pretty good. At this point, you know, I think I moved my stop loss to break even, so making that a risk-free buy right there. But, you know, that enabled me to go for this sell without too much of an issue, you know, without too much. And, you know, considering we just did take a loss on the sell, the attempted sell from here, you know, I thought, okay, I think we've been given a good enough reaction down. We're still within that 5-minute supply zone, which we talked about, and it has just reacted off of this potential 30-second sort of 15-second base that I've just identified here. So, you know, that could have been, you know, the UTAD of the distribution schematic, and then we see this aggressive move to the downside, you know, breaking all these structure points as well. So as we forward the price, let's see, comes into entry pretty instantly right there. And you're definitely getting an entry, and you can see wicks going above the entry line, so definitely be getting entered. And it's just a case of watching and waiting of how this trade progresses. After this point here, it felt okay enough to have a reduced risk, so I moved the stop loss just to these highs right in here. So just where these wicks are right here, I moved the stop loss to there and sort of just left it running really. And from then on, it was just a sort of a case of managing, which side was going to win. I'm in both buys and sells at this point, so it's just a case of watching where price goes. So let's chuck it back into the 5-minute. And to be honest, it's touched this demand zone now. So this 5-minute demand zone, which we took initial buys off of, it's touched that again. And to be honest, it's starting to create a degree of equal lows, a degree of liquidity within this demand zone right here. So as we see price, we can see it's creating another further trend line, so there's even more liquidity sitting there now. And I was looking for further re-entries, at this top zone right in here. You can see that this black box which I've drawn out, that would have been my next sort of re-entry zone to take further sells once more. But as we can see, it never really got there. It's taken out this trend line right now, and as we can see, it's getting back into this demand zone. So we can either see, two things could either happen. We're going to either see it go straight through the this demand zone and continue this bearish movement that we've been seeing, or we're going to be getting a manipulation of these equal lows over here. So we're going to be looking to see that sort of sell to buy movement. So something like that, and then continue to trade to the upside like that. That was one of the second sort of scenario I was hoping for. But as we sort of see what price actually did, it's just sort of lingering around this price, and then we start to see it really move to the downside. And sort of by this time, it's evening time, midnight sort of time, so I'm heading to bed. The trade is not risk-free, it's a reduced risk for the sell. The buys did get broken even in the end, obviously, and then it was just a case of holding it overnight. Obviously, as you guys know, I don't really like to hold my trades overnight, but in this scenario, after analyzing the previous demand zones, the previous higher time frame demand zones, I was convinced that we could get into this 1 hour institutional candle sort of demand zone which we identified, and obviously the imbalance that exists within that grey box which I've identified before as well. So as we forward the price, we get into that demand zone at around 3 in the morning. So I think TP was hit around that 3 in the morning sort of time, and that was pretty much the end of the trade and hitting that 1 to 15 risk to reward ratio, like so. So if let me just exit out of the replay mode, and as you can see how price has actually progressed since then. It's got into the imbalance, it's filled the entirety of the imbalance quite well. Soon as it did, it filled it a couple times probably, but then it gave us that definitive move away. So it's probably wise for me to take profits in that sort of region. But now it may not be a bad shout to sort of look for these potential buy scenarios, and a bit of a heads up. I don't know when this is going to be posted, but this is live price action right now. At the moment, this area looks very, very attractive for some buys right now. So we're going to be monitoring, and obviously you can see I've already set my alert at this price at 149.4. So this zone which I've just drawn out would be, I'd be looking at this zone right here for a potential buy. So watching the price action, see if we can get a a lower time frame accumulation in this zone and then see it pop up. It is getting fairly late in the day now. It's around 4:40 p.m. UK time. So obviously coming towards the end of London session. New York session is still going strong, probably until about 9 p.m. But yeah, it may not be a bad shout to go for potential buys from this zone here to the upside. It has just reacted off that 1 hour institutional candle that we identified earlier. So not this 4 hour one, the 1 hour one in this black box which we had looked at earlier. So based off of this candle right here, and that was our POI. We've seen it, it's given a reaction that has broken structure to the upside. We've got the let me just make that smaller so we can see. So we've got high, low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. We then get some consolidation as it enters the imbalance, and then we see a very strong movement up. A very strong movement up that does break structure above the previous significant lower high right here. So you know, I didn't intend for this to turn into a bit of a, you know, market outlook or anything, or a trade sort of you know, sort of giving a sort of a trade idea out, but it just so happens, you know, this looks like a good area. Looking at that 15-minute time frame, this rally-based rally looks really good at the moment. So you got that rally, this doji looking bearish candle here as the base, and then a further rally to the upside, you know, breaking that structure and giving us that bullish sort of bias. So there we have the full trade breakdown of the 1 to 15 distribution on Gbpjpy. I hope you guys really took value and learned from this video, and if you did, please do like, share and subscribe, and definitely stay tuned for more of that trading source.